Right now, questions still remain about the future of the vacant General Motors plant in Janesville.
But first, another massive plant, this one right here in Madison, set to close in the coming years.
This is News 3 at 6.
Madison's Oscar Mayer plant will be closing its doors.
The announcement made official this afternoon. News 3 was the first to report on the major manufacturer's plans to leave. News 3's Jessica begins our team coverage tonight from downtown Madison. Jessica?
Well, yeah, this announcement is coming as a shock to nearly all of the local and state officials that I've spoken with today. A spokeswoman for Governor Scott Walker says he found out today. Madison Mayor Paul Soglin says he found out last night. They say that Kraft Heinz, that owns Oscar Mayer, gave them no warning that they planned to leave the city or expand in another state, taking 1,000 jobs out of the city of Madison. The mayor and county executive began to announce the steps that would happen next at a news conference this afternoon. Some 700 production line workers and 300 executives will all leave the city over the next 12 to 24 months in waves as part of a corporate closure of 7 plants nationwide. But officials said both that they'd rapidly deploy to help workers and that Madison's economy can absorb the loss.
We do have the capacity to grow more jobs in other sectors. We do have manufacturers in Madison and Dane County who are right now looking for skilled workers. And so I don't think this is going to be as bad as we saw the GM closing in Rock County.
Oscar Mayer's is an institution in the city of Madison. A lot of people have spent a good share of their life, almost all their life there. And it's a real sad situation to have them leave.
How great
it's like a death in the family.
The South Central Wisconsin Workforce Development Board says they will deploy a rapid response team to work with the employees to find new jobs or to get them retrained. Now, some of these jobs are expected to move to Chicago. Others are expected to go to Davenport, Iowa, where Kraft Heinz announced today that they were going to build and expand a state-of-the-art food production plant there. Reports out of Iowa today are that the state and city offered the company a number of incentives to create that new production plant. But we reached out to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. They said they learned of this closure today and that they had not been asked to provide a retention package to the company.
All right, Jessica reporting live downtown. Jessica, thank you.
Some workers told us today they sensed something like this might be on the horizon, but still it was a trying day for plant employees. Dave DeLozier picks up our coverage from outside the Oscar Mayer facility.
Yeah, Michelle, you know, it appears as if that the Madison facility is going to take the biggest hit from today's announcement. Kraft announced that it's going to close 7 facilities in North America, and that will reduce its factory-based jobs by 2,600. Of those 2,600 jobs, 700 of them are here in Madison, with an additional 300 executive positions. Now, the employees were informed of the closure today at a 1:30 meeting. Many told us that there had been cutbacks over time and that there were persistent rumors of the closure of the facility. While this will have an economic impact on the entire region, it will be felt directly by the 1,000 employees and their families.
I've been out at Oscar Mayer for 21 years, and they're just telling us that the plant is closing in January 2017.
It's kind of hard to take in being there so long. Just feel bad for the people that have been there even longer and don't get a retirement or find more out in the next few months, I guess.
Kind of saw it coming. Been seeing it coming for a while. We've been losing product out of this plant for several years, and I've been watching it downsize. We've got so many empty spots up there, it's not even funny.
The company told the employees at today's meeting that they would be informed later of a severance package that will be available. Now, all of the employees that I spoke with today were very disappointed, which is very understandable when you invest more than 20 years of your life in a company. But quite frankly, Eric and Michelle, none of them were really surprised by today's announcement because the rumors had been persistent for a long time.
But nonetheless, very tough news. Dave DeLozier reporting live for us tonight. Dave, thank you.
And as you might imagine, that closing will have widespread impact on the East Side community. Leah Linscheid has been talking to residents there, and she joins us with what their reaction has been to this news today. Leah?
Yeah, Eric, as much as this plant has been a part of Madison's identity, just like Dave said with the workers, residents who live on this side of town really aren't surprised by today's news. Now, over at Wiggy's Bar, literally in the shadow of the plant, just a couple blocks over, owner Dave Wiganowski says Oscar Mayer has been cutting workers for the past several years. Once a renowned place to work, Dave even spent 14 years there before opening his bar. He says the plant pretty much helped build the east side by bringing business here. Now, without it, this entire neighborhood, this entire city could suffer.
You think of all those workers, even if there's only 700 left, think of the money that they spend in the neighborhoods with the grocery stores or the bars or the restaurants. That's going to be gone.
While Oscar Mayer was once the main employer of nearly every household here on the east side, Dave says lately that hasn't been the case. Mayor Soglin even says only about 50% of that workforce lives here in Madison. Still, that plant closing is going to have a huge impact in this neighborhood, specifically for Wiggy's Bar, in terms of patrons and in terms of property value, Eric and Michelle.
Yeah, it really makes you think about that impact in the surrounding area. Leah, thank you very much.
Well, Madison has gone along the ride with Oscar Mayer through some ups and some downs.
Yeah, a look back now at how Oscar Mayer developed into a city mainstay over nearly a century. The founder of Oscar Mayer was, in fact, Oscar Mayer himself, who worked at a small Chicago meat market. In 1919, he and his brother set out for Madison and bought a plant from a farmers cooperative. Even these days, most people can identify with the company by its advertising symbols, slick marketing ahead of its time that started back in 1936. Some Americans may still remember Little Oscar, the still iconic Wienermobile and the Wiener whistle.
No use, men. There's no way to make friends. Wait, my Oscar Mayer Wiener whistle.
In the early 1980s, though, the company was also associated with bitter labor negotiations, a wage freeze in 1982, and threats of a strike in 1984.
These workers are very upset with this company and very upset with their tactics of trying to divide and conquer.
There were stories about layoffs.
I work to go to school, so I won't have enough money to go to school this summer.
Also stories about wage cuts and pickets. Oscar Mayer told workers the industry was changing. In the 1970s, America had become more health conscious, and Oscar Mayer said the demand for beef started to decline. In 1980, the company bought Lewis Rich. Oscar Mayer felt it had to respond to the growing demand for poultry. A year later, another big change. Oscar Mayer was bought out by General Foods. Workers wondered about the future of the Madison plant, and state officials said it was indicative of a bad business climate here.
Now, they will become part of a New York situation, and they will make the decisions on where they maintain the headquarters and what they do strictly on the profit and loss sheet.
Then there were questions in 1985 when General Foods was bought out by Philip Morris. Yet that year, Oscar Mayer announced a 5-story expansion to its Madison offices.
We see this as a positive signal to the community that we are going to stay in Madison, that Madison is our home.
The plant employed about 3,000 workers when it joined forces with Kraft in 1995. Last year was part of Kraft's refrigerated meals division, which had $3.4 billion in revenue, a little more than the $59 Oscar Mayer made on his first day in that Chicago market.
Well, also today, last week, General Motors announced plans to permanently close its assembly plant in Janesville.
The plans are still tentative until the contract is ratified, leaving the city of Janesville still on standby. Our Rock County reporter, Valina Jones, has more.
Even though General Motors will likely sell the plant here in Janesville, the question as to who takes over the property next is still left up in the air.
With 250 acres to fill, it's anyone's best guess what the future holds for the site with close to 100 years of history stored behind its gates.
We really don't have any indication from GM of what they plan to do with the site, so we're still in wait-and-see mode.
A new tentative agreement between GM and the United Auto Workers released last week shows plans to permanently close the plant. But once the contract's finalized, the next move is on GM.
We are ready to work with a private company should GM decide to sell it to a private company, or we're ready to start, going to work ourselves.
Though the assembly line came to a stop years ago, it's not clear what impacts on the environment have been caused that the company or another owner might inherit to clean up the site. A TAB president of Forward Janesville, John Beckard, would like to see GM pick up.
They have a certain obligation to the community to not only sell the facility perhaps to the city or to a third party, but with the city as an intermediary, and they clean it up.
The city's looking to implement new ordinances to make sure the property is taken care of. They're also looking to see if the site meets criteria for blight that would open the property up to tax credits. But whatever the future holds, Beckard hopes redevelopment will come sooner than later.
It's a reminder of what transpired there. It would probably be helpful in the healing of our collective psyche if we could get on with this task.
In Janesville, Valina Jones, WISC News 3.
According to the city, once UAW locals vote and the contract is ratified, GM will begin to discuss the plant's future. That vote could happen as early as Sunday.
Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin is calling for a federal investigation into how the Department of Veterans Affairs handles the personal information of America's veterans.
And this comes after a News 3 investigation that showed how the Social Security numbers of hundreds of veterans in Wisconsin were sent to a random citizen earlier this year from a federal VA.gov email address. Federal law and multiple VA regulations require that all emails with personal information be password protected. News 3 learned the VA's software requires password protection for emails with 9-digit numbers that are separated by dashes, but not for 9-digit sequences that don't have dashes. Since Vietnam, anyone in the military's ID number has been their Social Security number.
Well, in a statement emailed to News 3, Baldwin said the VA Inspector General needs to investigate whether the VA system and process effectively safeguards our veterans' personal information. The accidental and unintended disclosure of personal information can put our veterans and their families at risk for fraud and identity theft, so we need to make certain that the VA has the tools in place to prevent that from happening.
All right, this week, 2 Republican lawmakers introduced a bill that would require all kids learn basic CPR skills in class. And today, advocates for the American Heart Association gathered in Madison to talk
Work on the century-old Garver feed mill on Madison's east side started today. It's the first steps in a large-scale restoration project for the historic feed mill. Today, workers were out winterizing the building, reinforcing the masonry work there and some of the bracing as well to keep it from getting some winter weather damage.
And now, News 3 Sports.
The Badger men's basketball team has its exhibition opener at the Kohl Center tonight, and we won't see Belgian freshman Andy Van Vliet. He has some sort of NCAA eligibility issue and can't play while the UW appeals the situation. Brevin Pritzel's also out with a foot injury, but the rest of the guys should be there for that exhibition opener against UW River Falls. It tips just after 7. Kevin Lewis joins us live from the Kohl Center. Kevin.
Jay, the Badgers lost 5 of their top 7 scorers from last season, including 2 to the lottery of the NBA draft. So the reloading job is going to be a big one. Now, the red and white scrimmage was a little sloppy, but that's to be expected when you have a new-look team playing under the lights for the first time with referees and lights and a crowd. But despite the fact that Bo Ryan's back-to-back Final Four teams have been gutted, his players say their expectations stay high and might go even higher.
Last 2 years, they kept taking a step further, and we want to take it that last step further and win the national championship. It's going to be a lot tougher. We don't have as much talent, but it's more of a glue team where we all know we have to work together as one instead of having a couple skill guys here and there.
Actually, I read a quote from Jimi Hendrix, and it was, I don't like compliments, they distract me. So I remember that quote every time someone asks me a question or I see my name somewhere, someone tells me, you were mentioned here, you were there, you're ranked this, your team's ranked that. Your team, this, whatever. I always remember compliments distract you, so try to avoid them.
Jay, the Badgers and Falcons tip off at 7 o'clock on BTN+, but we'll have highlights and post-game reaction coming up on News 3 at 10. The Badgers played UW River Falls 10 years ago and won by 27 points. You can probably expect a similar outcome tonight at the Kohl Center. With the Badgers, I'm Kevin Lewis, News 3 Sports.
All right, Kevin, thanks very much. In Milwaukee tonight, Jabari Parker will play his first game of the season for the Bucks as they host the Philadelphia 76ers. Parker played 25 games in his rookie season before he tore his ACL in a game in Phoenix. Now less than than a year removed from that night, Parker's back. They'll ease him back to full game speed by limiting his minutes to start. But you can tell Parker's glad to be back tonight, although he's a little nervous about it, too.
Thanks.
The state boys soccer tournament begins in Milwaukee tomorrow. We'll have 3 local teams going for state titles. In Division I, Madison West, and Division II, Milton both play their first games Friday. Division III, Mount Horeb has its semifinal game against Grafton tomorrow afternoon beginning at 5. The Packers face an undefeated team for the second straight week when they play at Carolina Sunday at noon. Today, Mike McCarthy had to face a lot of questions about the Packers' struggling offense, specifically why it's been so tough for Packer receivers to get open lately. You could see McCarthy getting irked about the subject while he was talking about it.
What's the definition of open?
Jeez, don't poke the bear.
Didn't like that question. Didn't like it. Jay, thanks.
Okay.
We'll be right back.